1 second. Let me just flip this. There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the On Meaningful Work podcast. I'm here with Matthew Boyd. Matthew, thank you for being here.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Just with the mic.
Pleasure.
So Matthew is the CEO of NatureBoss, an online marketplace which connects corporate teams with environmental groups that can facilitate meaningful experiences in nature. NatureBoss is on a mission to evolve the way businesses connect with the environment. So prior to NatureBoss, Matt co-founded Vollie, an online marketplace that is unlocking a new style of skill-based remote volunteering. In 5 years of operation, Vollie has seen 5,000 plus social impact projects completed to date through 300,000 plus skill volunteering hours, generating over 5.7 million of savings to the current 1,200 plus non-profits using the service. Prior to Vollie, Matt has 10 years experience in marketing operations and business development, and has been responsible for running projects that have contributed to close to 10 million of not-for-profit organizations.
A lot of numbers in there.
Yes, that's quite a bio, right? So when I read that, or when you hear someone talk about what you've done in the past, what kind of feelings does that evoke for you?
A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But just trying to sort of follow my head and my heart, and not really being afraid to try to do something a bit different in the space, which always comes with its challenges, and you sort of you go against the status quo, what's been done previously. But I've loved it ever since I left the sort of comfortable full-time gig in Christmas 2015.
Wow,
and got started. It's just been great, and for me, I opened myself up to this world I didn't even know existed, of entrepreneurs and compassionate people working within the not-for-profit space, just more like-minded individuals for me personally. So yeah, it's been good fun. It's been like, what is it now? Like a little over 6 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly no regrets.
Yeah. I mean, 6 years is not a lot of time in the grand scheme of things, and you've done so much in that time.
Yeah.
But also what you mentioned is, this balance between your head and your heart, and how you approach things. What leads, do you think, when you're thinking of a project?
What leads? It's kind of shifted for me. I've been way too head over heart, way too thinking what is the best avenue forward rather than feeling. Thinking tends to come very quickly for me. It'll just sort of shoot to the front of mind of, okay, well, this is the right way forward. And for me, I've learned feeling can come a lot slower, and you just might need to sit with it. I think this is one of the reasons like so many people meditate these days, to really just stop and think, how do I really feel about this decision, or where I'm currently at in my life, or whatever it might be. So I've been just traditionally go, and I've made a lot more mistakes as a result. But these days I definitely try to slow down. The quick stuff through your work, you can just sort of, you can get to. But when it comes to bigger decisions, sort of new routes to take with your career, I think feeling is the best way to go. I've read a lot of books through lockdown, a lot of personal struggles I think a lot of people had. And so I've done a lot of work on myself personally, and I think that's fed through professionally.
Yep.
And I've had it on good authorities through some of the best thought leaders and authors out there in just the space of personal well-being, as well as success in every possible form. Given the choice of what you think about a situation over what you feel, lean into feel.
Yes, yeah. I think, I love that, and I resonate with that. So just in terms of getting to that feeling, are there practices that you adopted specifically for that, and how do you kind of squeeze them into your day?
Um, I don't know about specific practices. I was meditating, but I don't so much right now. I may do more so in the future. I just try. I think it's just about slowing down for me, and whether I'm working or whether I'm walking my dogs, I just trying to be present. One of my biggest problems is overthinking. So sort of being present with my thoughts is good, because I can sort of get on top of where I'm at, but sometimes I just need to like be able to actually switch off as well. So for me, I've got a really good balance now between work and just life. Fitness, like exercise is really, really important for me, like playing sport with friends. Just that balance. I just know myself really well now. And I know that point where my productivity has dropped enough, even if it's kind of surprised me. It might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm thinking, I'm going to keep pushing through to 4 o'clock before I go for a run or whatever. But I'm noticing it's like, well, I'm not feeling right at this point. So I'm actually going to go for that run now, or whatever it might be, and then come back. Because I've made the mistake so many times of just pushing through, because I said I was going to work till 4 before I took a break. But just not doing that anymore, because it can just throw things out of whack. Your stress levels crank up too much, so I'm just aware of that through, again, a lot of trial and error, but reading a lot of books and just knowing myself. Like I did so many things the hard way in 2016 with the first year of sort of building Vollie. So I think that's it now. Just knowing myself without even really realizing what I'm doing through the day, but just making better decisions for myself, because from that I think work improves.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to bookmark this and come back to it, but
Okay.
I'd like to start with your origin story. So where are you from? Where were you born?
I was born in Chalfont St Peter.
Okay.
It's a village in England. It's in a county called Buckinghamshire. Buckinghamshire runs from the south up to almost the Midlands, around Birmingham. I've met maybe 12 people in as many years here in Australia, in Melbourne, that have known Chalfont St Peter, which has blown my mind. Over, I was doing like bar work when I first got to Melbourne, and actually for a little bit when I first like quit my job and I was getting Vollie off the ground, self-funding it. And the conversations I'd have with people across the bar, where they're like, where are you from? And I'd say, London. And people would be like, where specifically? And they dig deeper and deeper. And it's just amazing, because it's this beautiful, just typical English village. I go back now and I just, you don't appreciate it as much when you're growing up, because it's just the norm. But I go back now and it's just, it's very pretty. And there's a lot of those sort of picturesque villages around that way. It's only 45 minutes into central London, by train. It's west of London. West of London's generally just very nice. So that's where I grew up.
All right. So not to go with, first impressions, but it sounds pretty idyllic, and it sounds like a pretty sweet place to grow up.
It was. And I had a good childhood. It was rural. It was me and my friends riding bikes, having, those 6-week summer holidays, which seemed to like just go on forever, just having fun and just playing sport and sleepovers and that kind of stuff. So it was a very nice area, and it was safe. Great community. Everyone knows everyone. And that's followed through today. And I will when I'm walking my dogs or wherever I am, I will look to say good morning or good afternoon or good evening to people. Look to make eye contact. Sometimes you get funny looks. Sometimes you get people say hello. But growing up in that village gave me this whole like any stranger could be a friend. So I've carried through like the Chalfont St Peter in me, and I still got that small town sort of.
I think more than that was the community in the village close? Like, did they get together to help each other out in terms of stripe?
Yeah, and we'd have like big fairs or fetes on the on Gold Hill Common.
Yeah.
There was Chalfont St Peter First School, which I went to, Chalfont St Peter Middle School, which I went to, Chalfont Community College, the high school, which I went to. So, you just grow up with people, and I've got a tiny family, but there are certain families that, were just very close. So it was my family, and it was the Carters and the Churches and the O'Tooles and a few others. And so the kids grew up together. So I go back and I've got, unofficial, not technically biological, but people I consider brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that's amazing. What were you like in school? Did you enjoy school?
Yeah, I did. I was sort of middle of the road.
Yeah.
I struggled with dyslexia, which was, I think, diagnosed or picked up, whatever you'd refer it to, by a teacher maybe when I was in middle school.
Okay.
So I went to middle school when I was 8, and I think in the initial years there, all of a sudden I noticed myself on a table with 3 or 4 other kids. One of them was actually my best friend, Nick. We both struggled with it. So that was an uphill struggle. But yeah, sort of good group of friends. Not the coolest kids, not the geekiest kids, just kind of like in the middle, friends with a lot of people. I had a great group of friends growing up. But yeah, academically, I needed to work. I felt twice as hard as everyone else to get similar sort of results. So it was hard, but I worked really hard through middle school. And by the time I got to high school, I was actually in the top set of maths. That's kind of how they did it in my high school. You had set 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4, going from, the smartest kids and the most challenging sort of curriculum down. And so I was in the top set of maths, and the second set, I think, of English, and all the other stuff was pretty standard. So, but yeah, I've always had to work very hard to get what I felt was like where the majority of other people are. So,
and given that situation, were there subjects in school that you gravitated to, that you feel that you didn't have to work as hard as?
That I didn't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
Or
that you just enjoyed more than others. Or?
Always loved PE.
Yeah.
Always loved sport. I've always loved sport, watching and playing. In high school, I loved geography.
Okay.
Which makes a lot of sense now with my love for nature and starting more and more businesses and running more and more projects in nature. So that always intrigued me, like volcanoes and how lakes evolve and all of that sort of stuff was really, really interesting. I did not do so well with languages. I've always struggled, like did French for so many years and can still, can't even string a sentence together. English I like, the sort of ability to be creative and creative writing and that sort of stuff. I'm trying to think what else. So maths was okay, that'd be the main sort of ones. Yeah.
Cool. How about outside of school? Were you passionate about anything? Did anything blow your mind that you thought, this is freaking awesome?
Yeah. Nothing that really comes to mind. And I'm someone that really struggled to find my path in life. There are those people who know what they want to be professionally from a pretty early age. And I did not have that. I only think now I'm really finding the space that I want to be in through figuring it out myself and starting my own projects. But I was just sort of cruising along, didn't really know what to do with my career, so thought I should be in business, studied marketing because I thought, well, you can be creative in marketing, and I consider myself a creative person. I'm a dreamer. So I was always very imaginative and off in my own world.
And I suppose, like, with me, for example, and this is a little bit embarrassing, but when I was a kid, I was like this huge Elvis fan.
Okay.
Like
Elvis is coming back massively, apparently.
Phew, yeah. Have you
That
seen the
new
movie?
film,
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but it's supposed to be
It's awesome. As a
very
fan,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
As a fan, I highly recommend it.
Cool.
But I suppose you're thinking back on that crazy passion of mine. It was in a sense, although I was an introvert, I started like majority of what I do now is events and workshops. And when I do that, I somehow channel Elvis, because it couldn't be me doing that.
You're an entertainer.
Yeah.
In your own right.
Yeah, in a weird, asymmetrical way.
Yeah.
So how about for you? Was there anything like outside of school, outside of that?
I was naturally introverted, even though my friends and I, we were out all the time, but I've always pushed myself with that because I don't know, I've had this, live life to its fullest mentality, which has sometimes been a burden, and created an unrealistic expectation. But in terms of that, nothing really. Nothing really came to mind. I was just a sort of, average kid, great group of friends. We loved to do stuff together. As I said, like sport, being outdoors was always really important to me. But no, not really. No.
That's right.
I'm trying. What was there? Trying to put myself in the mindset of me when I was, however old,
10-year-old Matt.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I've done that with my psychologist at times, addressing past good, bad, and ugly kind of stuff from life. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to put yourself in that space, and
And so coming to uni, then you said you picked marketing.
Yeah.
What drove that decision?
I just had I wasn't given enough guidance.
Yeah.
High school. My high school was a bit rough when I went there. There was last year of middle school, they did this thing where first years of high school wrote letters to last years of middle school to give them a bit of a feeling of what to expect. And so the I shouldn't be naming it, it's terrible, but I think it's improved a lot. And I did have overall like a really great experience there. But because in England you had, so you've got what was for me, it was the 12 plus, and then I think it became the 11 plus, where you basically took this test, and if you passed, you could go into the better schools, the grammar schools and so on. Not necessarily like private schools that you need to pay for, but it just meant because academically and, from a IQ intelligence perspective, you were able to go to those ones. And I didn't even try with that test, which was terrible. I don't think I would have passed it anyway, but I didn't try because like all my friends were going to the Chalfonts, the high school. And I remember like being at my nan and granddad's and like having the test and not even trying because I'm like, all my friends are going there. So, not the smartest decision, but went to this school, and it was a pretty good education. But when it came to like when you were approaching, so you can finish school at 16 in England, or you can stay on and do what they call sixth form between 16 and 18. And I did that, and the career counsellor there was just completely uninterested. And I had one session with her. Just not helpful at all. Didn't like try to guide me, and so I just thought, well, I'll do business in some way. That's where you make money, which in hindsight is just stupid and something I will never pass on to my daughter. I don't care if it's tap dancing or painting or economics, whatever you're passionate about, pursue it, and you will make money from it, because if it truly is your passion, you'll be great at it. And anyway, so I just did marketing. So went to uni and did that for 3 years.
And how's the experience of doing that? How's uni for you?
Well, uni was tough for me. So because my family broke down when I was 16. So, still a lot of stuff there, but that was, I think we all have trauma. And my big trauma, which even to this day, I've sort of worked through a lot of stuff, but very traumatic experience. Without giving the gruesome details, sort of like just, breakdown with my mum and dad, and there was a separation there, a lot of ugliness. And so I just cracked on between 16 and 18. That was the point where me and my friends were like going to pubs and, just drinking, but, nothing unhealthy, drinking as some sort of, late teens do as they're sort of, just finding themselves. And then around 18, I kind of stopped, and coinciding with uni, I basically introvert to almost hermit. I was in a lot. I think the impact of everything that happened with my parents was hitting me. I became incredibly insecure, and just my self-worth was just rock bottom. And so uni, I just focused on studying. As a result, I smashed it.
Wow,
and did incredibly well in uni. Almost got a first. I was just like a percentage, maybe 2 off of a first in England. So the system in England of how you get graded.
No.
You got a first, which is 70% and over. 60 to 70% is a 2-1. 50 to 60% is a 2-2. And you get a third. I think it's 40 between 40 and 50%. And so I almost got a first, and in hindsight, nobody actually cares. Nobody really cared in England, and people definitely don't care in Australia. But uni for me was just it was a tough time, but I just focused on my studies. So I didn't really get the uni experience. I started to come out of my shell again after university. When I was from around 22, because I did uni at 18, and then I needed to defer for a year just because it was pretty tough. And then 19 to 22 were the 3 years. And then after uni, that's when I really sort of found myself again, and got better from there, and traveled and made new friends and that sort of thing. But uni wasn't that typical experience for me as a result.
And then after uni, how did you go about thinking about a career? Was it just, you just kind of went applying for jobs, or did
I finished uni and I went traveling. I said to myself, I'm not going to do that before or during uni, because I'd just seen too many people before. I'll travel and then I'll go to uni, and so many of them just didn't go to uni. And then people who deferred for a year didn't come back to uni. So I'm like, I'm going to get my honours degree. And then I traveled. So I finished uni. I worked in pubs for a number of months, saved up the money I needed. And then my friend and I went traveling for 9 months around Southeast Asia. We went to Japan, we went to India, all around the Southeast Asian countries, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and then finished up in New York. And the plan was to go back and get a job in London and finally start my career. And I got back to London, and it just wasn't for me. There's just too many people, too much of a rat race. So wherever it came from in me, I thought, I'm going to give Australia a crack and go to Melbourne and start my career here.
Wow. So what was it about Melbourne that...
I'm not sure.
The weather?
Yeah, which, compared to England is absolutely fantastic. But, Melbourne gets a lot of stick from other parts of the country for being cold, but this is nothing compared to England. But Melbourne for me, I don't know, I came here when I was 12 with my family. Around about that age, and was just blown away by this country. And then when I was traveling, I came back for that second time, and Australia just really resonated with me. Melbourne, it was on a sort of gut instinct, and it proved to be right. It's so well suited to where I grew up in England. It's a lot more European. There's huge like Greek, Italian populations. A lot of English here as well, and it's got that sort of big town, less so than the sort of city, feel to it, which I think sort of is, it's true to this day. And so, I got here, and within 2 weeks, I arrived in February, so middle of summer, and I just, I fell in love with it within 2 weeks. I'm like, this is where I'm going to live. This is where I want to stay.
So when you were 12, like what blew your mind about Melbourne, Australia? Right?
Oh, as a kid, like Australia, it's so big. Like the variety of sort of climate and deserts and beautiful beaches. The weather was incredible because we came around like December, like Christmas time. It's just a very special country, and I think I picked up on this like sort of freeness. Like I just went back to Europe, and I went back to England, and spent a lot of time in London, and I've come back and I've realized just there's just less pressure here, easygoing. People are just generally just really friendly, open. There's just this weight that I think a lot of people who live in London and work around London carry, because it's a strain. Like it's expensive there, it's dangerous in a lot of different parts. It's a beautiful city, but I just like going as a tourist these days. I just felt that just spending a week or so, like just in and out of London, mostly like in London. I was just like, and then I came back here and I was just like, oh, it just feels easier. So I think I picked up on that as a kid and, carried it through to now.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? So I'm originally from Mumbai. Like that's where I was born and brought up.
Right. Busy city.
And I've been in Melbourne, 22 years now.
Right.
And like, just like you said, every time I go back to Mumbai, it's like I'm a tourist in my home city.
Yeah.
It's like Melbourne is, I think it took a while, but I've reached the point where Melbourne is now feeling like home.
Me too. Yeah. Me too. How old are you?
42.
42. I'm 38. I think for a long time I just felt like, London was always there. And, when I'd watch the Olympics, I was conflicted because I'm like, obviously all the coverage is the Aussies and, everyone's going for the green and gold. But, my ties are obviously, I want to see Great Britain do really well, which they've actually done pretty well at the most recent Olympics. But it's only more recently that I truly feel that I've just I suppose I can be both, but I've just truly got this appreciation now. I have had for a long time, but that just how much this country has given to me. And so I just and there's this friendly competition between England and Australia, or Great Britain and Australia anyway, so it's almost like you have to pick a side, whether it's the Olympics or the cricket or the rugby or whatever. So I've just truly like relaxed into that. I think it's just come with age.
Also, I don't know if you know Paul Graham. He's the founder of Y Combinator, which is,
I know Y Combinator. I wasn't sure who the founder was,
but he's also kind of like this Silicon Valley oracle. Like he writes these essays which are deeply philosophical, and but he wrote this one about cities and what a city whispers to you. Like he says, if you go to New York, the city whispers, make money. Like that's where you need to be in New York.
Yeah.
Like Los Angeles, the city whispers, be famous. That's what, you need to be in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that with regard to Melbourne. Like what is Melbourne whispering to me? And the answer I came up with is, to be yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think that's right. I think like, and I think it's true generally across Australia. I think that authenticity. I was listening to a podcast just this morning, and they were talking about tall poppy syndrome in Australia. Also the case in England. They were looking at the UK and the cynicism in the UK, which makes for great comedy.
Yeah.
That painfully, awkwardly dry.
The David Brent.
Yes. Like, Ricky Gervais. And I just watched this most recent special, and it's just outrageous. And he just does not pull any punches. And he's been a massive innovator in that space. But, back to like the Monty Pythons and so on, like, British comedy's been there for a long, long time. And one of the guys on this podcast was talking about how, due to the fact it rains so much there, it's cold so often there, just grey, your climate and your environment, can really attribute to that. And so, they're talking about tall poppy syndrome here. And I think, so they were also talking about the States, and you can be anything and anyone there. And there's a lot more enthusiasm and optimism that will sort of surround you when you've got a business idea or you're starting to make it as an actor or whatever it is, which I think is great and admirable. But I think like the tall poppy syndrome that's here, and it keeps us humble. And I think with that comes that or maintains that authenticity as well.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't think about that way. I think also, say with the US, it's, yeah, you can, it only serves you, I think, if you've reached a certain level. If you're below that level, you're stuffed because there is no social safety net there. Like your health insurance is tied to the job that you have.
Dental and all that stuff. Yeah. And I think America's a country of winners and losers. They're big on that. A lot of the sports you can't draw. It's like overtime, like if it's a draw at the end of an NBA match, they go to overtime, So I think it's great. And there's a lot of winners that come out of that country. But I think it also, there's this unhealthy pressure on people. And the fact that they still can't get that, that basic healthcare system, in place for people, it just means that too many people slip through the cracks. And that is just not healthy. That's not good for a nation like that.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if you've been to San Francisco, but that's like the example of what it's like to be in the States, because
the extremes.
The extremes is just so stark.
Yeah.
But coming back to you, so
trying to solve world problems.
That's another podcast. So you came to Melbourne and you settled in Melbourne, and then you got your first proper job.
Yeah, well, it took me a while to get a first proper job. I came on a 1-year working holiday visa, and I interviewed for months. So I got here Valentine's Day, 2008 for some reason. Don't know why. And I was interviewing it was about 3 months. And at 3 months, I was staying with a friend in South Yarra. He put me up. He was working on a film. It's in special effects. So he was working on the Pacific at the time.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah. He was like showing me these what they call them, like the daily, maybe they call them the dailies, but basically the reels of just like what was shot that day and what he's blown up. And anyway, staying with him, he was getting paid very well. So I was in a nice place, but I did start to run out of money after 3 months. And I thought, right, as much as I don't want to do this, I need to fall back on something I'd done previously, working in pubs in England. So just looked for some bar work. And I think it was after my latest unsuccessful interview, which they would go well, but then when a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them would go well. And at the point where they would say, great, okay, this is looking really positive. So what's your visa situation? And my heart would sink because I'm on a 1-year working holiday visa. They need to sponsor me. So all of a sudden they're thinking like, oh, we've got to spend another 6 to 10 grand on this person.
That's a tough situation.
And it just failed every single time. And so I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I need money. So I decided to walk from the convention centre of South Bank up to the arts centre. A lot of bars around there. And I thought that's a great space to work, great view of the city and that. And so I walked from one end to the other in my suit. I'd come from my latest failed interview. It was a very expensive suit. I spent far more money than I should have. I got swindled at Maya. I think they realised I was pretty new. Anyway. And so I was going into these bars dressed in a really nice designer suit. I only went into 3 or 4 that just really captured me. And one that was formerly called World Bar. It's now called Hopscotch down on South Bank. I walked in and one of the women there, first of all, looked me up and down, because I did have resumes on me. Oh, actually, no, I didn't. And she looked me up and down when I said, oh, I'm after a job here. And it's very sort of businessy around South Bank. So she's like, what is going on with this suited business-looking guy? And she was like, okay. And she got the manager, and the manager said, have you got a CV? And I said, no, I don't. Kind of deflated in my voice, but still wanting to fight for this because I was just back was against the wall. And I just said, I've got a lot of experience. Just give me a shot, give me a trial. I'll prove, that I'm good at this. Got a call that night. Started the next day or so.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and just started working behind this bar. Very quickly got promoted to supervisor, and before I knew it, I was running the bar, part of a about 6-person management team. This was like a 300-400 capacity venue, big venue. At one point, it was the second highest generating hospitality venue in Melbourne after Transport in Fed Square. And yeah, I just worked there, and it was a lot of fun. First year was incredible. Second year I was a little bit over it, and third year I was just like, oh my god, I need something a little bit different. But that's what I did for the first few years before I sort of took that next step and got out of it.
Why do you think, like even in the bar, why do you think you progress so quickly?
I got a good work ethic.
Yeah,
I get it from my dad's, both my parents, but particularly my dad. Like my dad's very hardworking. I get my energy, my hunger for life, from my dad. Like he was very, very hardworking. So I see a job as a job. My first job was being a paper boy. I delivered those newspapers to the best of my ability. So I've never slacked off in a job. And so I got in there, took it incredibly seriously. A lot of people, there's great people who work in hospitality, but we all come across those people in a cafe or a bar. Well, you just know, we're just thinking to ourselves, you don't want to be here, And I was just like,
that's in any job really,
True. Yeah. But I worked very hard and just sort of progressed quite quickly.
Actually, just quickly on the work ethic, do you think you got it from observing your dad, or was it more, do you think it's genetic somehow?
Not sure. I think well, genetics I think definitely play a part. Good and bad. You can take stuff from your parents. But yeah, I witnessed it. My dad was he was a role model of mine, like a big role model of mine. And he also he kind of put it on us as well. If we were going for a walk, we were gonna power through that hike or whatever. And in terms of school, he was on it. And just that sort of, I think, healthy amount, but that pressure to come on, let's go. So
what did he
bit
do?
of all three, I'd say.
Sure. What did he do for a living?
He was a policeman. Both my parents were police officers, and that's how they met. And then he got headhunted by a big bank as a fraud investigator. Wow. Yeah. And kept progressing, and ended up making a lot of money. We had a lovely first home that I can remember, Lilac Cottage, and then we moved into this beautiful home, big home. And that sort of added to just how lovely my childhood was. But he was very successful. And
so after 3 years at the bar, what was you thinking then? How did you?
Well, I needed to get sponsored.
Yeah.
So they did sponsor me. If I wasn't going to get sponsored, I didn't want to do the farm work, first of all. And but if I had to, I would have done. But I did get sponsored early enough before that. But I was up against it because the last bar manager they had sponsored, who was also English, bailed. So they were just burnt out. They'd been burnt from it, and they didn't want to do it again. And so they had it all set up, and there are however many spots that a company can sponsor, of their staff. I don't know if it's per year or whatever, but they had it all set up, but they just said, no, we're not doing this again. So I had to really prove my worth there. And I remember the night when I sat down with one of the owners, because I'd said it to him, and he, I'd really pitched myself to him. And initially I got a no, but then I saw sort of a bit of an opening, so I continued to push. And he said, we'll sit down and have a beer one night. And weeks and weeks and weeks went by. And then one cold winter, I think it was a Monday or Tuesday evening, because it was quiet, and I was just behind the bar, just, doing my thing. And then the guy comes over and he's like, right, let's have this conversation. And he caught me completely off guard, because for the first few weeks I was like, every time I saw him, I'm like, he's going to say something. And he didn't. And then and I was tired, and I remember just thinking to myself, I won't swear. I was just about to swear, but I was just like,
swear.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just like, shit, this is it. This is the moment. This is this could be the difference, because I had it in my head. It probably wouldn't have been this dramatic, but I had said to myself 20 times, my life will never be as good if I go back to England as it could be here in Australia. I just thought there's so much opportunity here, and I just was so sure of that. And then everyone's different, you know, but for me, I think that would have rung true, that going back to England, it wasn't quite where I wanted to live. So yeah, I just remember that walk like around the bar to go and sit down with him. And I just somehow pulled it off. We had a beer as well, which didn't help, because that just kind of threw me off my game a little bit. And I wasn't so on the ball. And whatever I said, I think I was just saying, like, you know, I will not let you down. You know, I will be the hardest working person here. Blah, blah, blah. Went on and on. And his words were like, okay, well, you know, if you're putting your hand up, I'll never forget him saying that. And I physically put my hand up and said, I am. And he's like, all right, let's go for it then. We'll progress, you know, the application and that. And I just came away and I was just buzzing. And
wow.
Yeah. And so from there, I was kind of tied to them for a few years. Quite rightly. And as I sort of said, the first year was just amazing, because I'm like, I'm sponsored, I'm having so much fun. It was just the best. Second year was so-so, and third year I'd sort of hit the ceiling of what I could learn there, and the hours were always really intense, and you lost all your you know, major holidays, work Christmas Day and everything. So yeah, towards the end I was like fully over it, but I just had to keep going until I could get sponsored. So until I could hit the point where I could apply for PR.
And then while you're working at the bar, was like outside of what you were doing, I think, would you look back on that now and think like that really helped me in what I'm doing?
Yeah, I think so. I think like working in the bar would have added a fair bit to what I was doing. I'm not really sure what. I mean, I just continued to work hard. It gave me time to like figure out what it was that I really wanted to do. I made great friends from it, like socially, you know, that sort of thing was really, really positive. So I'm not sure in terms of career. I just think career, there would have been some things that came out of that. But, you know, more so it was about staying in this country and being able to, you know, start to set myself up. I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing with my career. I thought I'd just naturally fall into marketing, which I did for a number of years. But yeah, whereas people sort of roadmap, you know, and plan out, okay, well, this is how it's going to go, I sort of stumbled my way through, and it was a bit of trial and error.
So what was the stumble after the...
So I left the bar. There was this new energy drink company that was launching. So they were FMCG, fast moving consumer good company, which is, you know, chocolate bars, energy drinks, anything you buy in a servo. And there was an opening for the state sales and marketing manager for this company, called the company was called Calidris 28. The product was 28 Black. Amazing product. It was an energy drink, natural, made with acai berries. So like a superfood, like, you know, really popular in Brazil. Tasted amazing. Mixed really well with alcohol or just on its own. So put myself forward for that. Went through a bunch of interviews and ultimately was successful, and was like, great, I can quit my job, you know, in the bar and you know, move into what I thought as a, you know, proper job, which I don't think is fair on the hospitality industry, because as long as you're passionate, no matter what you're passionate about, you know, do it. But I wasn't passionate about that anymore, so moved into, for me, what felt more like a proper job.
Around what year was this?
So I arrived in 2008. It was 2011, I think. Yeah. Would it have been? Yeah, around then. Yeah, 2010, okay. 2011.
So maybe fast forwarding a little bit. So where were you in around 2014?
2014, I did the energy drink job for a bit, and then I worked in an ad agency for a short time, one of the biggies. I always like grew up like reading the advertising books and seeing the campaigns and thinking this is where I want to be. Maybe I was in the wrong agency, I don't know, but the whole like work incredibly hard, play somewhat hard, you know, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. I didn't enjoy my experience there. So left that, and then I worked for this education to employment company. So I was there. So I was with them up until the end of 2015, and that's when I started my own things. But yeah.
And I think, that's what I really want to get to is how did the idea of Vollie first start to percolate?
So that came about because the company I was working in, it was a lot of fun. I was ultimately running the sports sponsorships for the company. So like we sponsored a major AFL team, we sponsored one of the Big Bash teams, the Melbourne Stars, sponsored Run Melbourne, all this cool stuff. And I just still wasn't happy and fulfilled. And I thought, if my 18-year-old self, or younger even, would have seen me like all access pass the MCG, running onto the field at pre-game or halftime or whatever, you know, to run these activations, I thought something was wrong with me because I love sport. And I thought, why am I not fulfilled with this? The other part of that job was running charity partnerships. So they had a partnership with one charity when I went in, and by the halfway through my time there, we had like a dozen, and I just found myself wanting to work more and more with charities because when I'd worked in the ad agency, we had one of the big car manufacturers as a client, and you know, their objectives of like wanting to just sell more cars ultimately. I didn't care. I'm like, you're already such a wealthy company. You already sell so many cars. So I don't care about helping you sell more cars. And to be honest, it was kind of the same with the energy drink because I thought, and they had an iced tea and an iced coffee as well, but I'm just like, who cares? It's just, okay, so I help this brand sell more. It's like people will be a little bit more perked up, and didn't care. I did care about the sports sponsorships. I enjoyed it, but when I started working with charities and I understood their KPIs are people's lives or helping animals or protecting the environment, I was just like, this is the real stuff. And then from that, I started to volunteer myself, and I realized how much of an impact that had on me. And that just turned my world upside down. And when I started like with these two dogs who might be popping in and out of the video here, Charlie and Grace, going to the Royal Children's Hospital with these two fluffy cavoodle teddy bears, and seeing kids and visiting kids in wards, and seeing their days being brightened up, but then also just, you know, just realizing just some of these kids were never going to leave the hospital and they barely had a life, and it just shook my world. And I was just like, okay, I didn't care previously, and now I know I just can't do it anymore. You know, and the job was good. It was comfortable. Like the energy drink job was great because I got like company car, fuel card, all that sort of stuff. But I don't care about those perks. I realized through that I wanted to do stuff with my career that made a positive difference. And so I then, through the volunteering experience while still in my last company that I worked for, I realized it could be a real pain in the ass to volunteer, you know, when applying, and just the, you know, I'm putting my hand up to give my time free of charge and, you know, share my skills if possible. And I came up against all these brick walls. And so that lived experience made me think, okay, maybe there could be something here, because most of the people I was working with, really talented lawyers and marketing professionals and HR and accountants and so on, sales guys. People were seeing me volunteer and saying to themselves, saying to me, how do I get started in volunteering? And I thought, there could be something here, because when I was volunteering, I was typically the youngest person by at least 10, maybe 20 years.
Okay.
Mainly women, because women are just kinder, compassionate, wonderful people. And I just thought, we got to get some like younger people supporting these charities, and that ultimately was what the idea for Vollie was. And I researched for months and months, sort of in between while working at this gig, and I thought I had enough. Like end of 2015, quit my job and pursue, you know, this first business. You know, pretty naively, not thinking through a lot of stuff, but I think, you know, that was ultimately a blessing, because if I would have known everything that would have been entailed, then perhaps I wouldn't have done it, but I probably still would have done.
That's amazing. But also, so while you were, I suppose, researching volunteering and what that would be like, did anything surprising come up in that phase about?
Lots of stuff, like less than 1 in 3 Aussies volunteer. The vast majority of people want to. Gen Y, Gen Z was less it's sort of in the workplace at the time, but Gen Y particularly are just like really not volunteering. Yeah, it's just a lot of problems with the space.
Yeah.
Just that I thought this platform could combat. I just thought it's got to be quicker. It's got to be easier because I know I started going to events like big charity conferences, big volunteering, national volunteering conferences, and they were talking about the biggest problems being they can't engage the younger generations. The industry wasn't really embracing technology, not very innovative, incredibly slow moving. And that just made me sad because I thought, well, if you guys were able to, solve some of those issues, then you'd be able to address and support the causes that you stand up for so much better, whether it was, the Lost Dogs Home or the Royal Children's Hospital or Greenpeace or whoever. So it just made me really sad that the industry was so slow moving and just lacked the support that it needed. So I thought, and there's so many donations platforms out there, and I thought, well, rather than throw money at the problem, what if people just threw their skills, which ultimately is really valuable.
Yep.
And, given the generation, which is kind of carried through to today, we don't have as much to spend, like, struggling to get into the housing market and so on, constantly hitting this generation up for more money. Why not just, share the skills that you already have?
Yeah. So the other question is, so you're working for the advertising company, you're helping car companies sell more cars, etc. And you said that you weren't really, you didn't really care that much about that aspect. But then you volunteered at the Royal
Children's Hospital.
Royal Children's Hospital, and you felt something there. I was wondering, like, while you were working in advertising.
Here comes Grace.
Hello, Mrs. Interloper.
Yeah, one of the cavoodles.
Did you realize that you didn't really care while you were doing the job, or did the experience at the Royal Children's Hospital make that more acute?
Good question. I was waking up every morning with my job and thinking, again, something was wrong with me because everyone in the company seemed to be happy. It was like, big company, free coffee and, great cafe on site and lots of perks like that. But I just thought something was wrong with me. I knew I just couldn't even conjure the energy or enthusiasm to talk to my friends at the weekend about how my week was. When that question was asked, I was just like, oh, you go. you talk about your week. So that increasingly, I think with any job, like starting a new job, even if it's not one you're passionate about, it's still very exciting and, it's a new office environment. And so you can get caught up in those sorts of, sort of, I don't know, whatever you call it, like dopamine hits or whatever. So it can feel really exciting. But once again, with this job around the 6-month mark, once I become pretty proficient and got a feel for all of it, I was just like, yeah, I'm not enjoying it. And then when I started to do this volunteering, I realized, okay, well, it's because I'm not in the right space in terms of like where my work is going, what it's attributing to. So yeah, it was a bit of both. I knew I was not happy, but that lived experience, and this is why my advice to anyone who's been thinking about volunteering for however long, just do it and don't think, oh, I've got to get it right first time. Because I had many experiences where I'm like, well, this feels like a bit of a waste of a Sunday or a Thursday evening or whatever. But you just learn, and that lived experience helps you sort of find your way through the dark sometimes.
And then when you thought of starting Vollie, this was your first entrepreneurial venture, and it was also a tech product.
Yeah,
it is a tech product.
Yeah.
So how did you go about? I think firstly, thinking of the idea, then thinking what's needed, and then going about, building that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to this day, and I follow a similar process, but just do it a lot more efficiently.
Yeah.
I started with the problem, and then looked to validate the problem.
Can you articulate the problem?
Yeah. The problem is that modern day professionals care about making the world a better place, making a difference, but aren't doing enough or feel helpless to actually be able to get involved. And ultimately what that means is connecting with organizations standing up for important causes, charities, not-for-profit, social enterprises. So there's this desire to get involved, but not enough action. And on the charity side, they desperately need these people to progress their organizations forward and support their causes more effectively. So the solution, as I saw to that, was what if there was a platform where within 4 clicks you could find an opportunity, a skilled volunteering project, which ultimately we decided to be online exclusively for scale and to fit in with, the increasingly remote way of working. You just select what you're good at and what you care about, and opportunities pop up. It doesn't need to be complex. Shouldn't be sent forms and forms to fill out from the charities, but they have like working with children checks and police checks and so on. So the platform, because it's all remote and the skilled volunteer isn't coming into contact with the charity or non-profit, then it just made everything so much easier.
Yep. So did you have a background in technology?
Nope. There was so much I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'd learned a lot through working in corporates, like, just working with legal teams and managing budgets, and obviously marketing was pretty well down.
Yeah.
But there was so much to learn. Like, I didn't even know what a CEO technically needed to do within an organization when you're a startup entrepreneur with a team of, next to none. There's just 2 of us. You do everything.
Who's the other person involved?
Tanya Dontis. So so we founded the company together. So I had the original idea. Tanya very quickly started adding value to it, and we just I was going to drive it mainly. I quit my job just before Christmas 2015, and Tanya quit her job early 2016.
Wow.
And we got to work on it together.
And then talk to me about like the technology aspect of it.
Yeah.
How did you go about building that?
Yeah, and something that you said previously as well around I think it was generally just how I went about it, but I just had a lot of conversations through like the market validation, and I now try to prove businesses wrong and the idea wrong before I proceed. I wasn't doing that with Vollie. Vollie was like my little baby, and I was validating the market, but I was leaning into, come on, it's got to work, which is not what I do now.
Yeah.
But I bought a lot of people coffees, and I just caught up and I just picked people's brain. Leaders within the charity space, friends who could be the supposed volunteers, tech people, because I was so unaware of even to this day, I can't write a line of code to save my life, but I know the process from start to finish, and I didn't have any of that at the time. So again, I was just speaking to a lot of tech people, confused a lot of the time, slowly figured it out. But through 2016, I just started with the essentials, and I got a good lawyer and a good accountant, got the business established.
That is so important. Those two. Yeah. Yeah.
Keep you out of trouble.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I just got to work, and I, very quickly, I mean, you got to think about so much. You got to think about, what's the how we're going to make money, forecasting, and all that sort of stuff. But the tech naturally had to come very quickly.
Yeah.
So I met with a bunch of digital agencies, and just ultimately landed on the guys. They're called Yump. They're in Melbourne. Just loved them. They offered a discount. They really believed in the fact that we wanted to support the charity sector. Wow. So again, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of hours speaking to a lot of people and just refining what it was that we were going to build.
And you mentioned like you bought a lot of coffees.
Yeah.
How receptive were people initially? Like, how did you go about asking people out really.
Yeah, people are great. From like, just your everyday worker at whatever business to like some pretty high profile people. Like, some of the poster men and women of the social enterprise space, and, CEOs of, investment companies and so on. Yeah. Like, and that taught me that, a bit of ego stroking, just like, I'm just looking for your feedback. Cause it's interesting because it's changed around now. And, these days I'm getting more of the reach outs and, could we get your advice on this or that? And I do. And so it's just sort of like this reciprocal process. But yeah, I was surprised how many people were willing to. You just, I was really accommodating, work around your schedule, meet somewhere convenient. But yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said about Melbourne's, positive influence there.
For sure.
Because I don't think that would be anywhere near as possible in London. People are too busy. Some would be just making crazy amounts of money. So again, that sort of small town, Melbourne vibe. Here's the other one. Here's cavoodle number 2, Charlie. Yeah, so I was surprised, but it was really helpful to buy a lot of those coffees and just feel my way through the dark.
Yeah, and I think I really resonate with that because also when I started approaching people, I could really, the first emails I sent out, I could feel like the stomach acids churning in me, because it was so nerve-wracking. But you're right in that I think with Melbourne, I think people can sense your genuineness if you are being genuine, and they're usually very, very responsive.
Yeah. Oh, so much can be said about authenticity. Yeah. But you also just need to relax into it, and there's nothing wrong with like the following up. It doesn't mean that people hate you if they haven't responded. A lot of people are just really busy.
Yes.
And just relax into it. And that, as you say, just be genuine. I mean, God, in the early stages, I cringed when I think like I was getting everyone to sign NDAs because I thought everyone was going to steal my business idea, and it's just like nobody cares.
Yeah.
But I thought I just had this like, holy grail of an idea, and so I was so scared. And that I see first time entrepreneurs like fall for that all the time. It's a very normal thing. You're just like, someone's going to steal my idea. Just relax with that stuff.
No, I think also one thing that brought me a lot of peace of mind, I can't remember who said it, but it's don't attribute to malice what could be just laziness or busyness. So if someone doesn't respond, it doesn't mean that they hate you, or it's just
people are busy. I went to my spam or whatever. And I'm a very sensitive person, like to the point where I sometimes wonder how I can even function. Just very sensitive. And so sales, which you just have to live and breathe as an entrepreneur, unless you're in a luxurious position where you can hire somebody to run that for you. But I've just the hard way become as good as I am right now. I think I'm pretty good, with like, whether it's B2C or enterprise sales. Like I certainly understood like the tips and also the perseverance and resilience that's required. But just like it was a roller coaster in the early stages, because I'd be riding the high of something going well, and then this person from this big company didn't respond to me, and it's been 2 or 3 days, and you just learn to develop a thick skin, for that kind of stuff.
And so while you were working on Vollie and all of this, like while you were trying to, find product market fit or whatever that might be, how were you supporting yourself? Did you save some money? Or?
I did, but I was working in bars and then clubs at the weekend. So it was a crazy time. Between 2016 and 2019, I think. I worked so Monday to Friday on Vollie, Friday night and Saturday night in some of Melbourne's busiest bars and clubs. So I had the energy for it, but it felt very strange going from like, trying to figure out this business solution to then pouring like, shots and just people getting absolutely shit-faced as a result. It was nice because I didn't really need to use my brain. Like I'd worked in bars previously, so once I knew where all the different spirits were, and the general processes of running, it was fine. But yeah, and that was just like sort of covering the bills, and just keeping my head above water and keeping the business sort of ticking along.
So just with that, was there, how do I phrase this? How did you kind of reconcile your ego in that? Okay, I was here and now I'm back down here. And
it was humbling because so I quit my job Christmas 2015 and everyone, I think, knew that I was starting something. Matt's got this big idea, like, tell me about the idea for your business. I told a few people, but not many. So everyone's just like, what is it? And then fast forward 3 or 4 months and they see me working in a bar and they're like, so what went wrong? And I was like, no, like, I'm working on the business. It's going live later this year. And then it would go live later that year, like 16th of November 2016. Never forget the date. But then a year later, I'm still working in the bar because startups generally don't make money for a bloody long time. So it was humbling. It was embarrassing at times. It was very tough. You know, I got a lot of people looking at me like sympathetically and feeling sorry and, oh, it'll work out, you know. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know it will, but I feel confident it will, but it just takes time. But I was fine with it. But yeah, the sort of reactions from people, it was tough to take. I mean, to be honest, I just prayed that nobody I knew walked in to the bar or club I was working at, but they were two of the busiest in Melbourne, so inevitably
someone would.
Most weekends I'd see people. So it was tough.
And what got you through that? Was it just confidence that has to work out, or?
It was. I'm a big believer. I'm happier to live with failure than regret. You know, and I still knew I was on the right path. It was taking a lot longer than I thought. It did take a lot longer than I thought, but I just stayed firm to it. I can't sit in a company. I do and don't care about the perception of others. Generally, I don't, and I will not base my actions on the perception of others. But because I'm sensitive, like, I will still feel it. So I just kept working through it. And I just, you know, it is what it is. They'll see one day, you know.
I'll show them. And so what finally cracked with Vollie? Like, how did you find product market fit, and when did the business start to be sustainable?
It took a while. It was scale. Like, we needed a lot of charities, a lot of projects on the platform. Ultimately, it's a interesting business model, not advisable, I'd say, because you've got your skilled volunteers on one side of the marketplace applying for projects, charities on the other side. Neither of those users pay. So we were starting to see really good activity through the platform, you know, lots of applications every week, lots of projects posted. The metrics were really good, but we don't make any money there. We make money through taking the technology in the platform, white labeling it, and working with universities and businesses to then engage their staff or students through the Vollie platform, connect them with our database of charities, track their impact, and so on. So it was a weird one. Like, and we went through these different iterations with charities. Like, we launched with a subscription model. There was like the basic package and the advanced package. The basic package, they could post up to 5 projects a month. The advanced one, they could post up to 8. Pretty cost effective when you thought about the breakdown per project and the skilled people they were getting. Died in the ass. Did not work.
Wow.
Then we went to paper projects. Like,
so do you know why that didn't work? Was it just charities didn't have the money?
Charities, I think, well, what we're experiencing now, I think, through, like, you know, just an abundance of streaming services, and even what is, like, you know, $10 a month or $15 a month or whatever, you know, you're looking at your entertainment streaming and you're just like, well, yeah, but I do this across 5 or 6 and this is becoming really expensive. Back then, charities were like, they didn't know the platform from a bar of soap. And even for it was like $79 for the up to 5 projects, or $149 for up to 8, which worked out to like so little, you know, for the project. And we highlighted why we charge and all the benefits they got, but it was just too much of a commitment. They weren't willing to do it. So we thought, we'll pivot to paper project. You could purchase 1, 2, 3, or a value pack of 5 projects.
Mm-hmm.
That started to get some traction, and revenue jumped up a bit as a result, which was good. But there was still this resistance, and there was a lot of work convincing charities. And I spent a lot of times with the sales, ultimately convincing a charity to spend $50. And I was like, and you do that again and again and again. And you're like, this is not a good use of my time.
Yeah.
So then volunteers, it was always free for, obviously they're sharing their skills. So then with charities, I just made a decision against everyone else in the company. It was still a very small team at that time, but everyone else was saying, don't do it. But I was just like, no, it's free for charities. We launched the new technology when we got some seed investment from Scalata Ventures. They're a Melbourne-based seed investment company.
Yep.
Really
Northern
cool.
Belt,
Yeah. And I was just like, we're going to make it free. We put in all these new features. The team were worried about quality control, and charities basically just posting terrible projects there because it's free. When things are free, sometimes
you don't value
exactly.
Yeah.
But I thought about as much of what could go wrong as possible. So pre-scope projects, accountability for the charities, and in hindsight it's worked out really well. From there we just saw scale with projects. All of a sudden our marketplace, when you run an online marketplace and it's got dozens of anything, it's not really a marketplace. You need hundreds. And from that point we started to see hundreds. It was when we ticked over 100 plus, amazing. Then it was 200, 300. It fluctuates now depending on the supply and demand, but we go anywhere from like 150 opportunities on the platform up to 400 plus. So it really felt like it became a marketplace. That drew then more skilled volunteers, but then also more businesses that wanted to tap into our increasingly growing charity audience, which Rose and Rose is now up to just over 1,200 and will continue to grow. So that was a big sort of catalyst. That was a bit of a turning point when we made that free. Enterprise sales then spending this time looking to secure, 5-figure deals, partnerships with corporates and universities. That help the business go to the next level, and all of a sudden we started to make pretty decent money.
And how is it today?
Today it's been interesting, like with Vollie we were going well up until the lockdowns, because our university partnerships were growing really strongly, because for universities students could work on these projects. It was work experience for them, which students need as much as they need oxygen. And it was with purpose-driven organizations, charities, non-profits and social enterprises. So that was growing really well. COVID hit, decimated the university space just because they lose their international students. Even to this day, I was speaking with someone at a university just this week, and I'm like, how is it? And they're like, oh, there's still, redundancies, and they're still recovering from it. Which is really, really sad. So that hurt us big time. We got a lot of government support, JobKeeper and grants and that sort of stuff, which kept us afloat. But to be honest, since then, both myself and Tanya have embarked on new ventures. Tanya's launching a business, again, socially driven, called Amazing Change. I've been working on NatureBoss. I'm working across a couple of other projects as well, so launching a few other ventures. So there's a few happening. Vollie has been surviving with limited attention, and I mean really limited attention from us, and we've been amazed by that, Tanya and I, that it's just continued, like just checking in with the metrics. I haven't been able to pay as much of attention to the enterprise revenue model, but the marketplace continues to exist, ticks along really nicely, lots of applications every week, lots of projects posted, and we're actually we're in the process of an exit now with Vollie, which is something I have never done before, and it's like the final challenge. I've been through like the early stages, the trying to ramp it up, the growth, the maintaining of that, and looking to build revenue. And we've got some good early interest. We've got a long way to go and lots of information to provide to a few of these interested parties. But looking at an exit with Vollie, which would round it off really nicely. And I said to Tanya, and I was saying to some friends and family the other night, this is not something too many entrepreneurs do to successfully exit from a business. I fully appreciate how much of an achievement this will be.
Yeah.
Arguably, like my biggest to date with my career, and particularly like the entrepreneurship side.
In what sense is that a big achievement? Is it more that the personal value that you've seen something grow up, like your baby has grown up and now is left leaving the home, or is it something else?
It's building something from nothing. And I mean, a big achievement for Vollie is building something from nothing and thousands and thousands of people interacting with it. That's huge. But then for that to be seen as valuable enough for another organization, or it'll probably be another business, but I don't know, could be something different, to see enough value to purchase it with what would be a reasonably decent amount of money, I think is pretty huge for me, and not something I ever saw myself doing. I never saw myself starting my own business. I was always the follower with my friends. I wasn't the leader. Yeah. So all of this has been pretty surprising, but to be able to do that I just understand how tough it is. It's hard to do, and to be able to do it would be a big accomplishment. And when I started Vollie in the early stages, that people would say to me, "What's your exit?" And I just thought it was just the most horrible thing anyone could say, because I'm like, "What do you mean? I love this business. I believe in this business. I'll stay with it, for forever." But it's not the way it works. Like, some people stay with them long term, but generally, you enter, and ultimately, at some point, you exit.
Yeah. And now with NatureBoss, just quickly, like what's the problem you're trying to solve there?
The problem there, so NatureBoss again is a marketplace. So I seem to be doing these as a bit of
those.
So NatureBoss is all about connecting businesses and their staff with environmental groups that run experiences in nature. So the problem we're looking to solve is businesses generally want to stand up more for our environment, our climate, make a positive impact. We're in this, some refer to it as a climate crisis. Generally, we just need to do more to protect our environment. So businesses know this, but in terms of the action and in terms of really, supporting and partnering with organizations that do just exist to support and protect nature and our environment, and staff, the benefits of getting staff out of the big high-rise buildings or even their home offices and into nature, there's just incredible health benefits of that.
For sure.
Team building, just general well-being, combating various different mental health issues. So that's what we offer to businesses. And generally, there's not a go-to destination. There's a lot of environmental groups, some list experiences, but this is a go-to platform where businesses can filter the sort of experience they're looking for based on their location, their budget, team size, cause preference, and so on. And for environmental groups, it either establishes for them or opens up that corporate revenue stream when they facilitate these experiences, which can go a long way to them supporting the causes that they care about, whether it's combating species extinction or protecting land, or First Australian groups elevating indigenous culture, as we are increasingly seeing more and more. There's still a long way to go there, but just more and more, this country and modern day professionals are understanding just the incredible benefits of just listening to indigenous people and just we've like in so many ways gotten it wrong. And I just think the more I learn about indigenous culture, the more I just think that living in harmony with the land in so many different ways is just like we've got so much to learn there. So there's so much education that can come through NatureBoss.
That's incredible. So this is your your second venture. What are the lessons from maybe hard or good lessons that you learned from Vollie that you're bringing to?
What used to take me a day on Vollie now takes me 30 to 60 minutes tops with NatureBoss. I've learned don't be proud, don't try and do it all yourself, surround yourself with good people. I'm acutely aware of what I'm good at and what other people will be good at, so bring those people in. just share the load, and you know, a lot of things that I've learned, like with Vollie, I just do a lot quicker now. You know, I'm just very efficient across pretty much every area of the business. You know, there's obviously some parts I can't do. I can't write the legals, but I'm very clear on how to brief this legal team so that, and the legals are absolutely airtight with the platform. So yeah, it's just through Vollie, I swore I'd never start another business because it was an absolute trial by fire, and it was so hard. But if Vollie was a 10 out of 10 for just difficulty and how much it almost killed me, NatureBoss is a 4, 5 tops. So, and it's just been easier, and it's a venture that's being funded by Odonata. They're an environmental group, and so they've paid me through the process to develop the platform, build the business. They've funded the costs. Everything with Vollie was self-funded through my savings and through the hospitality work. So, you know, the strain of that, and just like, oh my God, am I going to end up on the street? You know, just pursuing this idea of mine, and just being easier in that respect. But the knowledge I bring to NatureBoss is just massively sort of evolved from what I knew with Vollie.
That's such an incredible journey, man. Really, congratulations.
Thanks,
it's, I think, hugely inspiring. And this is usually the last question I like to finish with. You know, thinking of your career and, you know, what we've talked about, what does the term meaningful work mean to you?
Meaningful work means to me life's too short, and you really should be doing something that you care about, like genuinely care about, and that holds a lot of meaning for you. It's just a no-brainer to me based on working for companies and not caring previously. It talks to me about health. You know, you've got to be aware of the fact if we're compromising ourselves, whether it's our integrity or our stress levels are higher than they should be, like, you know, all those invisible illnesses, potentially even diseases down the long term from just not... Diseases might sound extreme, but essentially, if you aren't working a job you really care about, if it's soul destroying to you, if it's so bad that it just kind of eats away at you, then it's a really like dangerous place to be in. Like, if you're happy with what you do, great. If you're content, that's fine. But the sort of the pinnacle of that is like that meaningful work, and to do something that you really care about the outcome of, I just think is huge. And that's what I've had since 2016. It's been so hard and so stressful at times, but even when it's been hell, my you know, foundations have loved it and known that I'm working on something and developing something, even if it fails. You know, just I often think forward to when I'm, you know, in retirement, whenever that is, or just say when I'm in my like 70s or 80s or whatever, and looking back now 6 years, I have no regrets. Like, you know, I've gotten a lot of things wrong, but just, you know, staying true to what I want to do, something that is really meaningful to me, is so important. The professional side of your life takes up an enormous amount of your time, day to day, week to week. It's well over half. You know, it's massive. And so if you're doing something that's really meaningful to you and you're not compromising on your values, your belief, your integrity, I just think it's so important.
And I think that ties into another thing that I think keeps me focused is that they say that you should work for only 2 people. Your 8-year-old self and your 80-year-old self.
Oh, interesting. Haven't heard that before.
Yeah, and I think for me, like my it's looking like what did my 8-year-old self dream I would be.
Yeah.
And then what would my 80-year-old self regret not doing.
Yeah. I often reflect on the 80-year-olds, and as I said earlier, better to live with failure than regret. So you know, using the whole regret thing as a big driver for me. But the 8-year-old self is interesting. As I was saying earlier, I had no idea what I wanted to be through first school, middle school, high school. At one point, I wanted to be a policeman just because that's what my mum and dad did. But I think it also comes back to what we were talking about at the start around just like, you know, feeling your way through rather than, and thinking less. Because if you just sort of stop and just sort of feel like, where am I at? Am I happy with what I'm doing? Like, I think it will guide you in the right way more often than not. A lot of entrepreneurs just create a shell, create a persona. I'm so guilty of it. With Vollie, you know, I created this alter ego, the person that was out there on stage, running events, you know. But yeah, it wasn't as authentic to the true, to my true self.
Yeah, it really surprised me to hear you say that you're an introvert, because I always saw you as this
I know.
guy who was out there.
I know. It surprises a lot of people. I was exhausted by the end of it. And the big telltale sign for me as well, I might run a really successful event. Everything's gone well. We've done a bit of packing up in the evening. I'm driving home and I'm not feeling happy. I'm not feeling content. I don't feel like I've accomplished, which was terrible and probably unfair on myself. But I know the root cause of that was because I wasn't going up on that stage or running the event as my true self. I was putting on this like, you know, super Gandhi, Captain Charisma kind of self. And so when people would compliment that, compliment me for running a great evening or whatever, it wasn't the true me. Yeah. So now as I'll, you know, sort of do more events in the future and so on, I'm just going to be more me. So I'm not going to be getting up on stage being Captain Charisma. I'm not hopefully going to bore people, but I'm just going to be more the true me. And, you know, even having this conversation with you, the way I'm speaking with you today versus if we'd done this 2 years ago would be very different. I'd be, in my head, I'd be thinking like, I've got to hit the sales points to upsell the businesses and, you know, don't say that and don't come across as this because that might not reflect well on the business. Now I'm just like, I'm just going to be me and it is what it is.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. The reason I really wanted you on the podcast was when you spoke at the social Melb meetup a few weeks ago, or a month ago.
Social impact meetup,
and I just saw this other side of you where you sitting on a stool, there was no slides, no nothing, and you had maybe 15 people around you and you just spoke from the heart and you spoke of your journey and you spoke of all the trials you went through. Thank you so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure.
I know you're super busy and, you know, all these things coming at you, so for you to give up, you know, like more than an hour of your time really means a lot. So
my pleasure, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to this podcast. If you're enjoying and are learning from this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. A great zero-cost way to support us is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are feeling extra generous, it'd be great if you could leave a comment or feedback on our Apple Podcast or YouTube pages. Or you could email your comments and feedback to me directly at rahul@disruptivebusinessnetwork.com. That's RAHUL at disruptivebusinessnetwork, all one word, .com. Finally, a big shout out to our producer Dan Scahill for his work on the keys and to Vashti Civil for writing the original music for our theme. Until next time, this is your host, Rahul Sohns, signing off. Bye.